Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, members, and welcome to this meeting of the South Staffordshire District Council Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Mark Evans and I will be chairing the meeting. Just to remind you that this meeting has been recorded, and by your presence here, you consent to that process. And also to remind you that anything you say will be immediately available in the public domain. Speakers and members of the public, I have spoken to most of you before the meeting and sort of giving you a little mini briefing. Let's hope the meeting is conducted in due decorum. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the minutes of the last meeting. Members, if you were present at that meeting and deemed the minutes a true and correct record of what took place, please signify. Members. Thank you. I will sign the minutes. Item 2, apologies.
Chairman, I've received apologies from councillors G. Bruce and W. Sutton.
Thank you for that. Item 3, declarations of interest. Members, any declarations of interest? Councillor Reid.
There we are. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in 23/01044. Do I have to leave the room? Non-pecuniary. Staying in. Won't take part of the debate and I won't know. Okay.
So before we move on to item 4, I will ask the other members present to introduce themselves. So I'm Councillor Mark Evans and my right is?
Councillor Bob Coe, Vice Chairman.
Pardip Sharma, the Planning Advisor to the committee today.
Helen Bembo, Development Management Team Manager.
Tom Nutt, Assistant Team Manager, Development Management.
Thank you. Item 4, determine of planning applications. And the first one we're going to have a look at is application number 23-01044/FULM, and that is land at Oaklands Farm, New Road, Featherstone. And I'll ask the officer to present the application.
Thank you, Chair. The site extends to approximately 2.4 hectares and consists of a roughly rectangular, gently sloping piece of agricultural land, bordered by mature hedges and trees. That's a wider site plan there. You can see the red line plan is the application site, the blue line is the land under the same ownership. The site is situated approximately 260 metres north of New Road and is accessible by public bridleway, which comes off New Road and passes through St James's Park, a caravan site. Brinsford Village is situated approximately 340 metres to the southeast, and Featherstone Village is further southeast at a distance of 0.7 miles. So this slide shows you the application site and the access point, which is here on New Road between the existing caravan site. This is an existing farm here, Far Larches Farm. The application seeks permission for the creation of a 70 megawatt battery energy storage facility, along with landscaping and associated works. The development would involve the installation of a series of battery units and inverters, along with CCTV cameras, perimeter fencing, and a substation which would connect to Bushbury substation and then to the grid. So this shows the application site in terms of the site layout that is proposed. And this shows it within the context of the wider area and the associated landscaping, which is also for consideration this evening. The facility would provide a means of allowing electricity from the grid to be imported and stored within the batteries at times of low demand and exported back into the grid at the times of system stress and demand. Sorry. The development is proposed to be time limited to a period of 35 years. The site is within the Greenbelt, where there is a presumption against developments subject to a number of exemptions. The proposal is considered to be an inappropriate form of development and would reduce the openness of the Greenbelt. As is set out in the NPPF, when located in the Greenbelt, many renewable energy projects will comprise inappropriate development. In such cases, developers will need to demonstrate very special circumstances if the project is to proceed. The UK is required under the Climate Change Act to reduce carbon emissions and through EU Renewable Energy Directive to increase electricity consumption from renewable sources. In line with the government's overarching national policy statement for energy, different types of electricity infrastructure are needed to deliver national energy objectives, including storage, which is required to reduce costs in the support of an affordable supply. Energy storage is considered critical to be able to avoid waste and increase energy supply during peak times of demand and help reduce overall energy costs. In line with the NPPF, local planning authorities should approve applications for renewables if their impacts can be made acceptable. The site is positioned well away from neighbouring properties and any vehicle highway and is well screened from wider views by existing trees and hedgerows. A landscaping buffer is also proposed which would further screen the site and mitigate landscape harm to an acceptable level. There are no concerns arising in respect of highway safety, subject to the highway access measures set out in the application, which includes works to the access and the submission of a detailed construction management plan. In addition, there are no concerns arising in respect of ecology, residential amenity, including noise, archaeology, arboriculture, fire safety or pollution concerns. An agricultural land classification report has been submitted, which identifies the site as being grade 3, which is good quality agricultural land. However, given that the development is time limited and could be reversed in future, it's unlikely to lead to the significant permanent loss of BMV agricultural land as a resource for future generations. There is ample provision of good quality land in this part of the district, and consequently there are no undue concerns regarding food production. This has been fully considered in the planning balance. Whilst the harm to the Greenbelt is given significant weight in this balance, it is considered that the development's impacts have been made acceptable within the context of national policy on energy, and the potential contribution to climate change and energy security is a significant factor which tips the balance in favour of the proposal. Accordingly, the recommendation is for approval for a temporary period of 35 years, after which time the equipment could be removed and the site revert back to agricultural use. So just a few slides to give some context of the area we're looking at this evening. So this slide shows the access, if you're looking at the current access road from New Road towards Far Larches Farm. And then the second slide on the right hand side is looking towards the north-eastern site boundary as shown on the red line plan. So again, this is the access road between the caravan park, which is existing, and Far Larches Farm. You can see the hedgerows there. And then looking back along the access track towards the main highway and the caravan park. These are views from internally within the site towards the site edges, looking southwest. And then looking back towards the farm and the pylon. To be clear, the pylon isn't within the site, it's adjacent to the site, it's not within the red line plan, and the access to the grid will be via Bushby substation, not via that pylon. And finally, looking north, south, from the southwest corner, which is stood adjacent to where I've just demonstrated that pylon currently sits, and then this is the existing access when you look back towards New Road. Approval is recommended subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen, for that presentation. And just to remind members that the recommendation is to approve subject to those conditions. Councillor Reid, I've just received a message from our legal department, and they're asking you to leave the chamber whilst the matter is debated. Councillor Reid. Members, we have one speaker on this item, and that's speaking for the application is Spencer Jeffries. Mr. Jeffries. Okay, sir, you have 5 minutes, and I will be quite strict on that.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, committee. My name is Spencer Jeffries, and I'm the development manager for this scheme, working for Conrad Energy, who are an owner and operator of energy assets in the UK, enabling the energy transition. This application for a battery energy storage system is one that should be considered in the context of the current discussion around the drive towards a green, low carbon, and more secure and flexible energy supply, with less exposure to global volatility. Grid-scale battery storage has gained wide recognition as a central part of this strategy amongst both industry experts and national and regional political levels. As wind and solar generation continue to grow as the primary sources of renewable energy, both of which are known for their intermittency due to dependency on weather patterns, battery storage has a key capability of storing critical energy that is needed when there is a shortfall in the network supply. It also allows for excess energy to be stored at low demand periods to prevent waste from renewable generation plant, which also being able to instantly respond to demand fluctuations as a frequency balancing service on the grid. The proposed battery energy storage system is a 2-hour system with a capacity of 70 megawatts. 70 megawatts of storage at full capacity can meet the average electricity needs of over 450,000 homes for 2 hours. This is assumptions of a 272,700 kilowatt hour year average usage per household, which is equivalent to a small family. This would provide a significant contribution to reinforcing and stabilising the grid at a local and regional level. In conjunction to highlighting the need for this type of development, I want to further explain our site selection process and enhancement we have incorporated in our proposal. Site identification follows a process initially based on the proximity to the point of connection. In this case, Bushbury substation and the availability of grid capacity, land must also be commercially available, practical to build and access. Distance from sensitive receptors and avoiding any planning restrictions where possible. In this case, the site has been chosen with all considerations in mind by balancing the proximity to the grid connection while minimising any impact on local communities. To minimise the impact on local communities, we have sought to utilise the existing topography of the site and its immediate surroundings and natural landscape. As displayed in the application, with suitable and sensitive design, the project can have a low impact on the local area. The natural screening with additional reinforced landscaping will provide a low visual impact to surrounding areas. The landscape visual impact assessment carried out as part of the plan application demonstrates this and has been approved accordingly by the environmental consultant at the council. Additionally, and relating to the landscaping design, the proposal is achieving a 34% biodiversity net gain on habitats and 100% increase on hedgerows, providing significant enhancement to the area. A further material consideration is the noise impact on the surrounding area. A benefit of the site location is that the noise impact on dwellings is limited due to the proximity of the nearest residential receptor, which is over 200 metres from the site. It has been acknowledged that the proposal would not cause an adverse impact upon the amenity of neighbouring residential dwellings, as demonstrated by the noise impact assessment. To conclude, this proposal is compliant with both local and national policy, noting the recommendation for approval in your officer's report and an agreement to have demonstrated very special circumstances within a greenbelt location. I hope the members recognise the clear need and benefits of this scheme and request the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries, and thank you for keeping within the time. Members, you've heard Mr. Jeffries speak for the application, in favour of the application. We have one ward member present. Councillor Holmes, is there anything you want to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not at this point, if you don't mind. I'd rather hear the other arguments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Members, I now throw it open to the floor for any questions, any observations, or any items that you want to debate. Members, over to you. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Contrary to what this planning committee might feel and planning officers might feel, I actually think there's a set of regulations which are more important than planning regulations, and they are the Health and Safety at Work Act regulations. Now, in the planning application, you have to bear with me, I'm not the best with a laptop. That's all I've got. I haven't got a hard copy. If we, in the planning application, under the documents, there's a section which is the fire risk. I've just got to get the right one. Sorry. Yeah, I don't propose that everybody looks at this, or you can if you like. It's a document dated 5th of July 2024. It's the fire checklist, and it's actually like a spreadsheet. Obviously, I'm at a slight disadvantage because all the members can't see this. If you want to try and find it, it's Battery Energy Storage System Planning Checklist, and it's really what I would call a health and safety risk assessment, although it's not termed that. Obviously, down the left-hand column, there's lots of potential things that could happen. And in the far right-hand column, it's the developer's response. And probably 50% of the developers' responses go like, details not available at this stage, but will be confirmed at detailed design stage following contract agreement with battery supplier. So, and this happens time and time again. I could count it up if you wanted me to. And we're talking about a fire suppression system, and that's the developer's answer. Now, I find that unacceptable to ask this planning committee to approve, even go against this application, when we've got a load of items where that's the final answer in the right-hand column. Just under there, we've got smoke or fire detection systems. This is the second column. Each container has individual detection sensors. Third column, further technical details are required along with relevant standards and test data. Right-hand column, details not available at this stage, but will be confirmed at detailed design stage following contract agreement with battery supplier. That could be 12 months after this planning application could be approved. Do you want me to read them all out, or can I make a proposal? Based on lack of information, it happens probably 20 times in this document, I'm thinking that this application should be deferred until we get proper answers in that right-hand column. And there's one particular one which I find quite remarkable. And it is under access. Now, I can only think it's access in an emergency because it says, left-hand column, a standard minimum of 6 meters, 6 meters, everybody, between units is suggested. If you look at the plans, there's about 2.5 meters between all these containers. Second column says, as per the layout and discussed in the fire strategy, we comply with the standard manufacturer's distances suggested. I'll come back to that in a minute if I have to. Third column, if less than 6 meters, further technical details are required along with relevant standards and test data. And in the right-hand column, the manufacturer's, that's important, distances are based on large-scale fire testing under UL 95408, which is obviously some sort of, I don't even know if that's a British standard or what. but we're in Britain, so it should be a British standard. However, the batteries that Conrad use are lithium iron phosphate, in brackets LFP. The FM Global guidance, the source of the 6 metre distance in the NFCC guidance. Now, NFCC is the National Fire Fire Chiefs Consultation of this country, not any other country, this country. And they're saying that was recently updated in July 2023 as per the guidance. Well, I can't actually find that in anything to do with under NFCC. So BESS consisting of LFP cell type, it must be a minimum distance of 1.5 metres apart. That's like 5 feet. I don't see how somebody trying to fight a fire could get in between two containers that close together. But, you know, what do I know? The separation distance between the containers at Shares Hill, this says, that's not even this application, but it says at Shares Hill. And I suspect that's a different application. This isn't in Shares Hill, is it? Exceed this requirement. So quite what that's got to do with this application, I don't know. I'm sure someone's going to come back with what they think is a reasonable answer. I'm not convinced. So my first, I'm just appealing to you. Is everybody happy to carry on looking at this application when we've got all these unknowns? And that's in the fire checklist, remember. So do I need to ask for a seconder?
Okay. You've raised a few points there. I think it would be remiss of me not to ask the officers to respond to the issues you've raised. I think there's been some quite sweeping statements there. And then we'll come back and see and perhaps go to a proposal. You okay with that, Councillor Steele?
Well, before we go, you may as well have a listen to this one as well then. It's actually, there's recommendations that there are 2 separate entrances to these sites because of the prevailing wind. If you look at that plan on the wall, Helen said, previous picture, I think this is the access to the site. That one there, so that, to me, there's only one access to the site. So need an explanation, because if the wind blew from the west, which is the left-hand side, sorry, it's from the top down, it would blow gases, smoke, whatever, over that access road. So I don't think that meets the fire chief's guidelines either.
Okay, Councillor Steele, I'll just give Helen a chance to respond.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Yeah, it's absolutely right. The checklist forms part of the planning application. As you can see, it's the validations requirement that we insist on to validate the application. It's not a document that's standalone. It's along the additional information that's submitted. One of them being the fire strategy that's also submitted. So the two have to be read to dovetail together. Some of the points that are raised in there will be covered in the fire strategy, and you'll see that that strategy is conditioned under condition 18. So is the equipment detail, the additional detail under condition 17. So whilst we don't have all of the detail as suggested by Councillor Steele, it's very normal to seek that by condition. It doesn't change the layout. The reason being, the 6 metre is suggested in guidance unless there are mitigating factors for you to reduce it down. When you read that document, there's the 6 metres is noted by a footnote, which then defers you to another document. That document was updated in January of this year, and there are 2 distances that are appropriate. The 6 metre has been superseded now. It's unfortunate and very unclear that the council haven't updated the other document, but the reason for that is there's a further consultation which is still out at the moment to reduce distances down again and make other amendments, including removing the 2 point of access. So it's clearly ongoing work. The conditions satisfy the needs for the detail that we would require for the purposes of this application. The distance required for the type of battery that is proposed here is 1.5 metres. That is the guidance. This is at 2.5, so it's in excess of that. So yes, it's less than the 6 metre guidance, but that has now been superseded, to be clear. It needs to be 1.5 and they are sitting at 2.5. The 2 points of access, again, yes, on the checklist, and it recommends that as a starting point, unless there are mitigating factors. During the life of this application, the internal arrangement that you can see, if I can just go back to that plan, it's probably the best one to see it. You can see there's a loop around. That wasn't the original proposal because the fire service, who were a consultee and make comments on this, weren't happy with it. So the internal arrangement was altered so that you can circumnavigate around all of the units there. That's satisfied and mitigated against the fact there was only one access. So we as officers are wholly guided by the fire service who commented on the application. So they've seen it. They were the ones who confirmed that the 6 metre has indeed been superseded. So these are matters that, you know, are fair to be debated and addressed. I would not agree that it's a reason to defer, because the information we've got can be secured by way of condition, and that's regular practice for lots of matters that can be reserved by condition, as committee are well aware. Appreciate the health and safety side of it. That has, from a planning perspective, been covered, and it is a planning committee, not a health and safety committee, so we can only take it so far. But in my opinion, it's been satisfactorily addressed, and the comments made are fair, and hopefully the rebuttal explains some of those gaps that sit there. So it's combining those two documents together, not just the one, and the conditions cover that. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Steele, so Helen's addressed the issues that you've raised there. Do you still want to go ahead and propose a motion?
Can I, there's a bit of confusion with dates here, because I have results of an appeal decision which actually went against an similar installation. And that's dated the 16th of February 24, which I think is after the date you mentioned about the update of the fire chief. Yeah. So, and that appeal was dismissed, and the 6 metres is referred to in this appeal decision.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Steele, thanks for that. I know that Councillor Cope has done a lot of research into that particular issue in the last 7 days. So I'm going to call on Councillor Cope now to share his observations and thoughts. Councillor Cope.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've been looking at this issue as well. I've been talking to Chris Steele on it. As of 24 hours ago, the National Fire Chief's recommendation was 6 metres. Councillor Steele was about to tell you about a planning inspectorate appeal in February, which was after this decision was made to reduce it, that the inspector actually refused that application, and Ellen has seen it and our officers on that very point of the 6 metres. However, I then did some research with Litchfields, who are the planning advisors to the planning industry. They alerted me to the fact that the National Fire Chief's guidelines is presently under consultation, and they are looking to vary the 6 metres. So as things stand at the moment, it is still National Fire Chief's regulation of 6 metres. However, the advice was that the fire chiefs was merely guidelines, and you must listen to your local fire chief. So Ellen today has responded by checking with the local fire chief, and they say they are happy with this application. So I'm rather disappointed that the national policy is being superseded by what the local fire chiefs say. They keep moving the goalposts, and it's disappointing that, as Councillor Steele said, part of the policies there should be 2 access points. There isn't on this occasion, but the fire service have accepted it. On some applications, but not necessarily with this, there has to be a container for what's called fire water. It's the spent suds and fire applications that are used should there be a fire. I have to say it's rare there is a fire on these, but there could be. And it was very serious, the one that happened in Liverpool. But this fire water retention is where to stop it going into the local water supply. Now, there are future applications where these battery sites are going to be very close to brooks and flood areas. But on this particular application, it's not near any flooded area or brooks, so that doesn't apply. But again, I'm disappointed with what the fire people are saying. You'll also note as well, they shouldn't be close to people's dwellings. And the applicant earlier on mentioned this. This is not, it's 200 metres, I think, from people's dwellings. So at least they've left that distance. But other applications are very close to people's dwellings. Again, the fire chiefs have got a limit of 25 metres from people's dwellings. The consultation, which closes in 2 days' time, they're proposing to increase that to 30 metres. So I'm scathing about the people's safeties involved here, and the fire service seem to be all over the place with their guidance. But I sadly have to say that our officers have followed it properly, and they've got the result from the local fire chief who's saying he's happy with it. So that's the situation. Thank you.
Thanks, you. Thank you, Councillor Cope. So just to reiterate that the local fire chief is happy with this application. I don't particularly want to go into to and fro with debates. Helen, is there anything you want to add to that? Okay, so Councillor Steele, just one last response now.
Quick one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under access, have at least 2 separate access points to the site to account for opposite wind directions conditions. Planners, the applicant's answer, please see attached revised plan submitted to the LPA providing a second access to the site. So where is that? It's no good saying it's when you've gone all the way up that drive. Don't accept that, but is that what you're referring to? That's not a second access. You're already on the site.
Okay, Councillor Steele. Helen, you need to come back on that.
Yeah, just to say, as I previously explained, the access point from the highway, absolutely, there's that one swooping road in that plan shows there, but the internal arrangement was rearranged in accordance with the guidance from the Chief Fire Officer, and they were happy with that. There's no physical way of being able to create the second access, so the internal arrangements were changed, and that was the mitigation proposed from that point. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Helen. Okay, Councillor Steele, so we've debated the issues that you raised, and I'll come back to you now. Do you still want to propose a motion that this matter is deferred?
No, Mr. Chairman. Can I change it to against? Then if you're not prepared to listen, I still think health and safety is more important, planning regulations. So I would, bearing that in mind, on the unanswered questions, in my opinion, and there's not a second separate access. I don't know if they're planning reasons. Perhaps you can tell me, but that's my proposal. Obviously, I need a second.
Okay, Councillor Steele, I'm just going to, so let me get it clear. Do you want to propose a motion to refuse the application on health and safety grounds? Yeah, just bear with me and I'll just make sure that those legitimate grounds.
Just say that, you know, we've got a situation here where, as has been mentioned, the fire authority are happy with this application. Health and safety is an issue for another statutory body, the Health and Safety Executives. You have a report before you which actually sets out all the relevant and material considerations as to why this application should actually be approved. There is nothing in your in the report before you, which actually suggests that this application creates a fire hazard. And therefore, members, the concern that I have actually got is that should you refuse this application based upon health and safety grounds, this authority could be liable for substantial, and I mean substantial costs, because the question is who is actually going to produce the expert evidence before the inspectorate to demonstrate that there is a fire health and safety issue, because the fire authority certainly aren't going to be providing evidence on behalf of South staffs. Therefore, I would ask you very carefully to consider the motion that has been put before you.
Thank you, Party. But so we still have the motion to refuse the application. Do we have a seconder, Councillor Harper, with us? Sorry, Wallace.
So just will councillors get an opportunity to ask further subsequent questions before voting on the motion to?
Yes, we're still in debate. I'm just debating the motion now. If that motion is passed, is accepted by the members, and the application will be refused. If we don't have a seconder and it's not passed, we will continue to debate the application and we will have a vote on the application. So as we stand in at the moment, we're looking for a seconder to Councillor Steele's motion proposal to refuse the application. If that goes through, then there will be no further debate. The application will be refused. But we will be looking for planning grounds to refuse at the moment. They're very, very vague at the moment. And as Pardeep has explained, we'll leave the council liable and vulnerable to damage of reputation and costs. So, but the motion is still on the floor. Do we have a seconder to refuse the application? Councillor Steele, we don't have a seconder, so what we'll do now, we'll move on to debating the application. So members, we're back on the floor and we're debating the application. Members, any comments or observations or questions? Councillor Harper Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. A comment and then a question. I do find it interesting that our Greenbelt district tends to get a lot of these applications. You'd think, you know, you'd want to avoid all the hassle as a developer and stick it on some brownfield site on a car park. So, but I think we all know what the answer is to that, and it's probably that it's cheaper to develop on fields. But by the by, we have to go by what the planning law says and not put the district at risk of legal issues. The balance here, in my opinion, is harm to the Greenbelt. The officer's opinion is that can be mitigated. So I guess questions around the decisions and like the information that was gathered to make that decision. There's a impact statement in terms of from Nature Space Partnership new officer who says that the development falls within the red impact risk zone. There are 12 ponds within 500 meters of the development and 6 ponds found within 250 meters. And there was great crested newt activity within 500 meters. So that caused sort of gave me cause for concern. And then I read the senior ecologist report. Yeah, okay, our ecologist said that there's a licensing agreement and that kind of has put their mind at rest. However, they've not actually visited the site. And I think that that's not good due diligence when you've got Nature Space saying that there is a risk. There's 12 ponds there. I don't know when the last activity was taken, recorded, but to not visit the site to see if those ponds have newts gives me a cause for concern. Councillor Cope mentioned around, I guess, the runoff of firefighting material, and that was a cause of concern for potentially waterways. I would also say it's probably a cause of concern for nearby ponds and waterways. So again, just a kind of a view on why the council thought it wasn't appropriate to visit the site again.
Thank you, Councillor. Ellen, you want to take that?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, because it's designated as a red zone for newts, they will have to enter into the licensing agreement. So if it wasn't in a red zone or there wasn't newts been found present through previous visits, through previous protected species surveys, they wouldn't have to enter into a license. So the license is the protective mechanism that we have across the district, and it's licensed through Nature Space. They're the licensed operator. So I don't want you to think that just because it hasn't been visited, the correct level of protection is in place. The correct level of protection is the licence. So whether it's been visited or not, there's evidence that there's great crested newts within the vicinity, and it's in the red zone. Therefore, we are insisting on a licence. So they will be protective. They're a European protected species. So the licence is the protective mechanism for doing that. So irrespective of the site visit, the high bar has been set. So hopefully that gives you some comfort. In terms of the water runoff, it is something that is considered, obviously, in the event that there was a fire. There's no watercourses within the vicinity that are felt to be susceptible. There has been a flood risk assessment, and the LLFA have reviewed it and they're comfortable with that. So protective mechanisms for waterways is something that is considered. But just to be clear, the licensing scheme is the high bar that we have set to make sure the protection for the European protected species is in place. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Harper-Willis.
Just a follow-up question. Has this site, I'm assuming, reached the like 10% net biodiversity gain? Okay, cool. So I think those gains are counted by like we use like a biodevelopment unit. So how many like units were added? Because sites like these, especially in the greenbelt, can be quite biodiverse light, I guess, because they're effectively monocrops and there's not many insects. So how many additional like units and what does that kind of account to? Can the council give a bit of colour to some of the things that are going in to mitigate that?
Helen, take that one. Yeah.
So we've reported it in the report by way of percentage increase. So it's 34% increase in habitat units and 100% increase in hedgerow units. So the minimum that needs to be delivered in each is 10%. So we're well in excess of the 10%. So a lot of that goes by way of obviously the planting. So we'll go back to that. Landscaping that will add to that, and then additionally, because there's an area of blue line around it which is under the same ownership, that can make sure that the net gain is easily achieved here. So you're absolutely right, councillor, that weighs in the favour of the development because we've got in excess of the minimum net gain requirements. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Harper-Willis.
Thanks. What was our like baseline for the site? Was it quite biodiversity rich and they've added even more, or are we starting from quite a low baseline?
It's an increase based on the situation prior to any development. So the site just before the application came in is the baseline. So if it's already quite rich, they have to increase it. If it's a low baseline, they have to increase it. So it's a percentage increase irrespective of what the original area looked like. So whatever the site was beforehand, that's the baseline. Does that help?
Another question around the temporary nature of the site. After 35 years, if that applicant wishes to make that site permanent, will there be weight given to that application because it's been there for 35 years?
Thank you through you, Chair. It would kind of be impossible to say at this juncture. Obviously, there would need to be a further application because this one is time limited to 35 years. So then we'd have to review it on its merits. We don't know what the planning policy situation would be like at that time. You know, it's forever a moving feast within the planning world. So I wouldn't want to speculate on what the planning principles in policy terms would be like then. Whether we'd have to take into account as a baseline what was there, it would kind of be very impossible to tell at this point. But obviously a further planning application would be required. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Harper-Willis.
I'll just re-ask a question in a different way then. If we were looking at this site and a battery site had been on this site for 35 years and we were looking to make it a permanent, would that be giving it subsequent weight today in today's planning regulations?
Under the current regs, if we were looking at something that had been there and we were looking to extend it or make it permanent, whichever what that would be, you'd have to give relevant weight to the fact there was already something in existence. But it's very similar to giving something weight or not, the fact that it's in the green belt. So it's still that balancing exercise that you undertake. Thank you.
Councillor Cope.
Thank you, Chairman. I need to respond again to some of the comments. Firstly, the one about temporary sites. Now, a lot of these are being developed right across the country. Do you seriously think if they're all going to be 30 to 45 years, that after the end of 40 years, everyone within 2 or 3 years is going to be disbanded? It's not realistic. A lot of us won't be around in 40 years, but that is not realistic, although it is what is being peddled by all of these applications. I move on. The Greenbelt issue that Councillor Harper-Ollis mentioned, does he feel it's very special circumstances? The problem we've got is decisions that have already been made by this authority. And we made a decision to refuse one at Lower Pen, but the inspector came back and he considered that very special circumstances existed. The reason they're all being scattered in certain areas is because of their proximity to the substations. Now, there's a lot in this area because of closeness to Bushbury substation. They're busily building out the capacity to take even more. And Penn substation is exactly the same. It's all being linked into this area. When Ellen was reading the report out about there's plenty of BMV land across the district, yes, there is. But our concern is it's all being concentrated into a very small area. They have to go where the connection is. Now, this particular application is not going into the overhead pylons. They're going to dig a trench right to Bushbury to link in, which brings me on to my next point, the policy about best quality agricultural land. There is a policy that where BMV land is used, we should be considering poorer quality land. Now, this land is virtually 100%, as many of the others are. But for me, we haven't considered poorer quality land. The applicant has considered alternative sites, of which there are 3. 2 were non-green belt, so not in the green belt, and the third one, the owner wouldn't sell the land. But looking at alternative sites, which is normally brownfield and green belt, is not the same as considering poorer quality land around the site. Now, it's 1.8 kilometres from Bushbury, and for me, there should have been a radius drawn around that point of contact of 1.8 kilometres to see if there was any other poorer quality land. I am advised by officers that we can't force the applicant to do this, but I have to say the policy says it should be done, and yet applicants say they can't do it. There's a big impasse there, and you know, I'm not happy with the way a lot of these are going, but we've got many more to look at. But I'm not happy with this, and I shall decide at the end, when other people have spoken, which way I shall vote. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, okay, so thanks, Councillor Cope. It was more observations than questions. Ella, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to come back on a few points there, because there's a lot of points that are pertinent to the debate that members should be aware of. The sequential test, the kind of test they do to find out the most appropriate site. Appropriate site assessment is one thing. It goes through the brownfield, goes to different sites, the connection points, available land. So that test is done and there's sites ruled out. The appropriate site assessment then is within a vicinity. It is unreasonable, and through appeal decisions reasonably recently, it's come out that it's impractical and unreasonable to expect a developer to test every other piece of land within that 1.8 metre. What we're asking is rule out any other lower grade land. We can't do that. So what as officers we do, we balance that up as loss of most better, most versatile, and we put that in the planning balance. What you would be expecting developers to do is test every field, every other piece of land that they don't own, have any jurisdiction over, and do intrusive soil sampling. It's unreasonable and it's not necessary. So the precautionary approach that we take as officers is this development is loss of BMV land. Everything else within that area, unless it's shown as 4 or 5, if we're getting into the technical detail of the quality of the land, that's not best and most versatile. 1, 2 and 3 is. So we look at all that as best and most versatile and we balance that up. And that's exactly what's been done in the officer report in front of you. So just to be clear, I appreciate the points that have been made, but it's unreasonable and not necessary to insist that a developer tests every other land that they don't have jurisdiction over. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Members, I now throw it over to yourselves. Any other member want to make a comments or observations? Councillor Perry.
Thank you. I take on board what Helen's just said. At the end of the day, that where does that leave us as an authority then? Because they're all going to be coming in with all, we've got a lot of these developments being thrown at us. I have concerns about the grade 3 agricultural land, because Ellen, you said earlier on that it's that after 35 years they can, you know, remove possibly and it can be back to that. If we take on board all of these that are going to be hitting us, which they are, then we're going to be a lot less of a lot less of agricultural land, because it's not just this one plan development, it's all over. And the other observation I've made while I've been listening to the debate is that we're in South Staffordshire with all our green belts and all our agricultural land are having to fulfil the conurbation. They've got brownfield sites there. I'm sure there's more than one brownfield site they could actually develop. Why are we giving the developers this free range of going out and having them where they want them, and we've got no say in it at all? Because that's how I'm seeing this debate as we speak now. So I have concerns. I've got no reason, I haven't got any planning reasons why I can't refuse it, but I have great concerns about what's going on. And you've just actually given them a broadsheet to say we can have them where we want them, whether you like it or not. And I'm sorry, if I'm going to be coming here to go through these plans, these planning applications, then I want to have some say in it. And I'm sorry, that's my view on this. I'm very disappointed that they can't find. I'm sure there's loads of brownfield sites around this area that they could have tapped into, but no, it's very much easier to tap into agricultural land and the best quality land at that. Sorry, I'm feeling a little bit, as you've probably gathered, a little bit angry at the moment, so I won't say any more, but I just wanted to make my view known. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Perry, thank you for those observations. And I don't want to prolong your anger, so I won't ask you for any more comments. Ellen, do you want to respond to that?
To be clear, at no point have said it's a developer-free reign. There is a sequential approach, there is an alternative site selection process, and that is robustly assessed by officers. So I just wanted to get that back across. It is not, that is thoroughly assessed by each planning application. If that is not done, the application would not be before committee. I think it's worth painting the picture that there are months and months and months of work that goes into these applications before they are tabled in front of this committee and in front of members of the public. There's an awful lot of work that goes on in the background before we get to the point where we recommend approval. Alternative site selection is absolutely key to that. So I just wanted to make that clear. In answer to your question, which is where does that leave us as an authority, which is a very fair question, because we have got the approach of a lot of developers because of the connection points. The approach that we are taking is the precautionary approach, which is it's best and most versatile land, and that is put into the planning balance. So the two together with the alternative site selection and the best and most versatile land looked at in the round of the connection point is what's balanced in the report, and that's why the recommendation is for approval. So it's not that it is not considered, it is considered within the light of the policy and what the remit of the policy allows us to do very thoroughly in the planning balance. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellen. Go on.
Just one more point. I've read the report, and we put a lot of play on the applicants findings of different things. We are, you know, we've got just their word for it. I'm sorry, it's their word against nobody's, because nobody else is sort of going out to look to see whether there is anywhere else. There's a lot of play on the applicant in this report, if I'm being truthful. So I'm just, yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. But I think that there's no intended direct criticism of officers in your observations there. Just frustration with the system. So let's make that quite clear that you're not particularly attacking the officers. It's frustration with just frustration with the system. Councillor Cope.
I agree, Chairman. There's no criticism of our officers. It's where we're at with it. But following on from what Councillor Perry said, there is a mapping system that you use as planners. It's called Magic Maps. It's a mapping system by Natural England. Now, where the ridiculous part of it is, to explain, and I've explained this before, BMV land is grades 1, 2 and 3A. Poor quality land is 3B, 4 and 5. Now, these magic maps that are produced by Natural England only find grade 3. The anomaly is 3A is best quality, 3B is poorer quality. Now, those maps exist, I've seen them in the area, and it does show a lot of grade 3 land. In fact, some of the other applications I've read are stating that there is poorer 3B land in the area. And what Councillor Perry's saying is we're frustrated that the applicants don't bother to look at that. The way things are at the moment, if you've got a connection point and a willing landowner, you're home and dry. You just submit the planning application. And there's a lot of anonymity to all of this. But there's no criticism of our officers. And we are in a dilemma tonight which way we're going to vote, because no proposal has been put for refusal, because I think we're struggling to find one. But there's a lot of frustration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Paddy.
Just going to say that I do share the frustration that Councillor Cope has actually mentioned, and it's certainly not helped by the planning decisions that are actually coming through from the inspectorate as well, because there is so much inconsistency. We've had a number of planning decisions which have actually come through where the development of solar panels and battery farms have actually taken place on the most best and versatile agricultural land, because the position both in policy and in law is that there is nothing to actually say that you cannot actually build the development on best and most versatile land. But of course you have actually got the the test that Helen's mentioned. So we as officers certainly understand your frustration, but the important thing I think for members tonight is to look at the report and actually consider, well, in terms of site selection, in terms of policy, are there any planning grounds to refuse this application, which doesn't actually put the authority at risk of costs, at a future appeal, if there is one. But the frustration clearly is actually understood because of the inconsistency of the decision making by the planning inspectorate in relation to these applications.
Thank you, Paddy. But now, with that in mind, I'm keen now to get the debate back to this application that's in front of you. So any comments or observations on this application and not the process in general? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. We do appreciate what you all do. We really do. Sometimes we don't know quite the full breadth of the subject, and we appreciate the advice from you all. So thank you for that, all of you. Forgive my ignorance, and I'd like to know whether there is an allotted number of solar panel farms to each, say, county. What I'd like to refer to is 2.1.3. An agricultural land classification has been carried out which identifies the whole site comprises grade 3 good quality land, which is categorised as being capable of producing moderate to high yields of a narrow range of arable crops, etc., etc. Is it more profitable? I know it isn't a planning decision. I just want to ask the question, if you don't mind. Is it more profitable now, and it's disappointing, for profitable for a farmer to sell the land now for this sort of plan? I come from a farming community in my youth, so for me personally, it's disappointing that this is going on, but I accept the way it is. So I'd like to look at, say, neighbouring Shropshire, which is where I come from, and do we have this sort of high number of solar panel farms going on in Shropshire itself? If you could just sort of guide me on that, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think what you're referring to is some kind of national strategy. So there's a bit more of a spread, and the simple answer is no, there is no national strategy. And it's very much like Councillor Cope has said, reasons of points of connection and accessibility to the grid, capacity in the grid. They are very much the key driving factors, because a grid connection is no good if it hasn't got capacity. So there's a few things that you have to go, and because of the proximity to Bushbury and to Lower Penn, that's why there's a lot within a close proximity. In answer to your farming question, I don't know the answer, but I do know that the solar panels and the battery storage units and all sorts of renewables are part of a farm diversification. So, but in answer to your profit question, I wouldn't be sure. Thank you.
Okay, Member, just to reiterate, if you make any comments or observation now, purely on this application and not on the process in general. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask through the officer, I'll go back to 2.13. It does say grade 3 land, 3A, sorry, good quality. What sort of crops were they growing there, firstly? And the other question on that, it says a wider range of crops. Can you elaborate on that? Because if we are causing a detriment on food chain, then that needs to be addressed. And also the issue of as grade 3A is the lower scale, is one at the very pinnacle top of the scale.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll try my best to answer those questions. Yeah, it's a grading system. So 1 is the best, then 2, 3A, B, 4 and 5. Just because it is 3A doesn't mean it's necessarily already used for food production. We need to be clear about that. They're not all currently used. It just means it could be, so it could be capable. So on that grading system, it's more like that it's capable of being used for food production. Doesn't mean that it was when that sampling was done. But yes, 1 is the top of the scale, if you like, and 5 is the bottom. In answer to your question, we don't think it was being used for food production at the time of this, but that we don't look at it like that. We look at it, is it capable of, and that's what's put into the planning balance. Yes, it's capable of food production. Is its loss acceptable when balanced up against all the other matters? So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly. Okay. Councillor Harbottle, is it about the applications before us now? Yeah? Thank you.
I'm minded to approve the application, not happily, but given the long form report that we've had, our officers have followed the planning law to a T on this one. I'm completely frustrated with both previous governments and current governments that they don't offer protections for greenbelt districts and don't try and enforce and maybe promote brownfield sites for these, particularly for these storages, because they're perfect for it. But, you know, my job here today is to look at the report, make a decision that will protect this council from legal troubles, and I think the report does that. And unfortunately, I think we're going to have to approve, so be it, unwillingly.
Thank you, Councillor Harbottle, for that summary. And in light of that, I'm minded now to move to vote, unless anybody's got any meaningful contribution about the application before you. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having listened very carefully tonight particularly to our officers, and having read their excellent report, I cannot but help agree with what Councillor Ellis has just said, and I regrettably, have to recommend approval.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. So I'm now going to move to the vote. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chair. I will keep this short. I don't recall a single one of these type of applications being recommended refusal. Since we've had them, we must have had 6 or 8. So times aren't going to change, but under this application, like you said, under local plans, the council has concluded that very special circumstances existed on applications for similar schemes, 220045, and I reckon they're the Lower Pen ones, and a planning inspector through an appeal, obviously was a successful appeal for the applicant. But that was 2 years ago. That just shows you how times changed, because of the sort of things that we know now. And it's the 6 metres that have been in then, that would have been thrown out then. So it's a fast moving situation, and we're making decision, and I will repeat it, we make the decisions, not the officers, as you know. So we're the ones who'll get slung out at the next election if we make the wrong decisions. We're making decisions for 40 years in the future. Certainly won't be around then, but some of you might be. It's just...
Councillor Steele, can I just ask you to wrap up, please? I'm not sure that the result of the next election is a material planning consideration. Members, I move to vote. I'm going to ask you, members, if you approve the application, to please signify. Thank you, members. Those against, voting against the application. Any abstentions?
Recorded, please.
Thank you, members. That application has been approved. It was a good debate. So any members in the public area there who are here specifically for that application, I invite you to retire if you so wish. And thank you for conducting yourself. Yeah, we can go and wake Councillor Reid up. Welcome back, Councillor Reid. We've just finished. We forgot to call you in for the other three. Members, the next application to consider is number 23/01083/FULM, and this is at Land at Lawn Lane, Coven. I'll ask the officer to present the application. Helen, over that start.
Thank you. We'll just start by just a summary of the site. So if we just bring up the first slide. The application site relates to 58 hectares of land to the south of Coven and to the north of Coven Heath and the M54 on 4 parcels of land either side of Lawn Lane. As you can see on the slide there's a small grouping of residential properties along Lawn Lane, which either directly adjoin the site or opposite. Public rights of way cross through the eastern section of the application site. There are existing trees and hedgerows along the site boundaries and within various fields. Existing high voltage overhead power lines and associated pylons run north to south, passing through the site. Just move to the next slide. So this just takes you through. That's just showing you where some of the residential properties are within the centre of the site. And go to the next slide. And that's part of the public footpath and generally hedges and trees either side of the public footpath, so views are limited. But that's one of the gaps on the right hand side there that you could see through, and where the solar arrays would be located. And those are the fields, the parcels where the proposal will be sited. So I'll just take you through the proposal. So the planning permission is sought for a series of solar arrays with an export capacity of approximately 48 megawatts. The solar array would comprise panels mounted on frames and associated cabling, inverters and low and high voltage switchgear. I think on the next slide it shows you a diagram of those. So there you've got the substation and the compound there. And then on the next slide, it just gives you a section elevation drawing of the panels there that would be on the mounted frames that would be piled into the ground, piled driven into the ground rather than fixed in any kind of concrete. Site access, we go back to the site plan. The site accesses are proposed on the east and western side of Lawn Lane, with the main access being on the eastern parcel where the substation is proposed. You can see that there in the centre. It's a bit small, but it's sort of the yellow line on the right hand side. That would be the access to the substation. Areas of new trees and woodland belts are proposed along Lawn Lane within the application site and around the field boundaries, and these are shown in the proposed landscape strategy. The existing footpaths will be retained with green corridors that pass in or around the site. The point of connection to the energy grid is at the Bushbury station, 1.8 kilometres to the southeast. The cable route would follow existing public highways and land within the owner's control to reach the point of connection. In terms of planning considerations, the site is within the green belt and solar farms are not one of the specific types of development listed in the NPPF as being acceptable within the green belt. As such, the proposed development compromises inappropriate development and causes harm to the openness of the green belt due to its encroachment into the countryside. Therefore, it is subject to the requirements of NPPF paragraph 52, which states inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the green belt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. Very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the green belt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm resulting from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. In this case, the other considerations put forward are that the proposed solar array would make a contribution to the production of renewable energy, which is supported by the national policy statements for energy. Solar is classed as a critical national priority infrastructure, with the need case outweighing the residual effects in all but the most exceptional cases. In line with the NPPF, local planning authorities should approve applications for renewables if their impacts can be made acceptable. With regard to impacts, the landscape and visual impact assessment concludes that the site is considered to have the capacity to accommodate the proposed development without long-term unacceptable effects on the landscape character and visual amenity. Whilst the proposed landscape enhancements are deemed to have the potential for long-term beneficial effects through establishing proposed species, rich wildflower grassland and reinforcing hedgerows and re-establishing those that have previously been lost as a result of field amalgamation. A cumulative site assessment has also been undertaken, which concludes that there will be no significant harm to landscape character. It is also considered that the proposed landscape enhancements would mitigate the impact on the openness of the greenbelt over time. An agricultural land classification report has been submitted, which identifies the site as being a high quality and good quality agricultural land. However, given that the development is time limited, be suitable for sheep grazing and could be reversed in the future, it is unlikely to lead to significant permanent loss of BMV agricultural land as a resource for future generations. Those are the comments of Natural England in their consultation response. There is a large amount of high and good quality agricultural land within the district, and there is no evidence to suggest that there are any issues regarding food production. Glynton-Glare study has been carried out that demonstrates that the proposal would have no adverse impacts on road safety or aviation activity. The proposal would have a short-term impact on residential amenity during the construction phase, and conditions are proposed to limit disturbance. There would be a low to minor impact on residential properties with regard to glare, reflections, and mitigation planting in the form of hedgerows would prevent reflections from ground floor windows. The layout includes buffer zones, that was amendments during the course of the application, from panels and first floor windows to reduce impacts to an acceptable level. As such, there would not be a harmful impact on neighbouring community as a result of this proposal. There will be no adverse harm to existing trees, heritage assets, archaeology, flooding, protected species and the highway network, subject to the recommended conditions. Whilst the harm to the green belt is given substantial weight, it is considered that the development's impacts have been made acceptable, and in the context of national policy on energy, the proposal will make a valuable contribution to cutting greenhouse gas emissions, which is a significant factor tipping the balance in favour of the proposal. The proposal is therefore considered to comply with the overarching aims of the development plan and the NPPF. Accordingly, approval is recommended subject to conditions and for a temporary period of 40 years, after which time the equipment will be removed and the site reverted back to its agricultural use.
Thank you, Tom. So members, you've heard the presentation application and the recommendation is to approve. We do have a speaker. That's Jez McHale, who is the applicant. Madam? Okay, just 5 minutes and I will be quite strict on that.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee, for the opportunity to speak in support of an entirely appropriate renewable energy development on a wholly logical site. Enesco is an established and trusted developer and operator of energy projects across the UK and Europe. We have extensive experience of energy developments and work with local communities to deliver, operate and also maintain our sites. The proposal for our Coven solar project has evolved through pre-application and planning application stage, consultation and engagement. And the clear officer support today is a testament to the time taken to refine and update the proposals in line with the officer's advice. Clearly, we fully welcome and support the officer's recommendation and hope that members can follow this robust and clear recommendation and grant planning permission. There is an urgent and critical need for renewable energy development, as clearly set out in government policy and was reflected in both the Council's local plan and the officer report for this application. The project has an agreed connection to the grid, and within approximately 12 months from now, could be contributing approximately 48 megawatts of green energy to the grid, which will power the equivalent of over 13,000 homes per year and save upwards of 10,000 tonnes of CO2 per annum, thereby making a direct contribution to local net zero carbon ambitions. We accept the site is within Greenbelt, however, there are clearly very special circumstances which justify the development, which have been demonstrated throughout the application process. Furthermore, a robust site selection and alternative sites reports demonstrate there are no suitable or available brownfield or non-greenbelt sites. There are no technical objections from consultees, and a range of planning conditions have been agreed to provide further certainty on a range of matters. It is also relevant that remarkably few local objections were received, given the scale of the development and number of nearby residents on Lawn Lane and Coven itself. We recognise there will be change for our neighbours on Lawn Lane. However, the scheme has been designed to protect the amenity of those neighbours, including a significant no development buffer and extensive landscaping. Of note, the distance between the panels and the nearest properties has been increased threefold over the application process. There is now an even more extensive buffer to the properties west of Lawn Lane, which includes a large proposed hedgerow to screen potential views. Residential amenity will be further protected through suitably worded planning conditions in respect of, for example, noise. In terms of noise, solar projects do not generate audible noise, and potential noise generating equipment is contained in sealed housing which prevents noise spillage. The noise impact assessment presents a very robust assessment, and the overall conclusions have been agreed with consultees. We recognise the site includes B&V agricultural land. However, yields from the land are lower than would be expected for B&V land and are lower than other areas of land nearby. As set out in the officer's report, there is no actual loss of agricultural land, no impact on farming businesses, and that taking the land out of arable use for the temporary period can improve the soil quality in the longer term. It is also demonstrated the wider area has large areas of B&B land and no alternative locations exist. Alongside this, there is over a 200% biodiversity net gain proposed for the project, which creates a significant improvement to not only the habitat within the project's boundary, but also the surrounding areas. Overall, and as set out in the officer's report, there is a clear recommendation to approve a development which complies within the adopted local development plan and the NPPF. Accordingly, we request the officer's recommendation for approval is followed. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping within the time. Members, before I move to the ward councillor, I suspect that many of the frustrations and indeed anger from the last application are relevant to this one. Can I ask that you put those aside and we just concentrate on the application before you, and any debate or observations are centred around the material considerations. Members. Councillor Holmes, have you got any, it's on your ward, have you got any observations to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I just refer to what I said before. I'd really rather listen to people's arguments in the debate. Make my mind up.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Members, the application is before you. Any comments, observations or items for debate? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Can the officers just clarify, you've got the River Penk on the one side of the development and you've got Waterbrook stream on the other. What's the mitigations on the issue of if there is contamination, please? That's the first point.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Yeah. Ellen? Oh, sorry, Tom.
I'm just going to say I'm not aware that there are any concerns in terms of contamination. There haven't been any objections from the Lead Flood Authority site, apart from conditions in terms of drainage, the drainage to provide a plan for the substation. But that's as much as I'm aware. Site.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. What I'm concerned of is if there's a fire issue, then if that does go in, we saw an incident of contamination in Walsall recently. We don't want that sort of acid going into the Penk, which is then fed into the local water courses, and as well as Waterbrook stream does the same.
Just to confirm, there are no batteries as part of this application, so it's just the solar panels. So I don't think it's the same issues in terms of contamination and runoff.
There is a substation, isn't there?
Just bear with me, Councillor Kelly. We've got some sort of obstruction here. Can somebody turn that off, whoever it is, or whatever. Looks remarkably like Councillor Ash. I know it's Councillor Holmes. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Sorry, Councillor Kelly, we got a bit distracted then, so we're back with you.
Just going to say the substation is not a substation in the sense that we've had with the battery applications. So I think we've got the plan up on the one of the slides shows the if you go, yeah, so you can see it there. I don't think in terms of the application it poses a risk in terms of fire that battery, because with the battery applications it's the battery units themselves that pose the fire risk in an unlikely event of a fire. So I'm not aware of there being the same issue on this site.
Councillor Kelly.
Chair, to make sure I'm clear on this, if solar panel farms do burst into flames, they do give off emissions to gas as well as polymetics that melt into the system that could cause an issue. That's what I'm referring to mainly, which could go into the watercourse and affect habitats and stuff like that. That's what I'm mainly concerned with. And my second point was, as most of this land is grade 2, what mitigations are being in place on that point?
Yeah. In terms of the contamination, the Lead Local Flood Authority would usually raise issues in terms of the submission if they felt that there were contamination issues to watercourses. They haven't raised any objections apart from requesting a condition relating to drainage from the substation. They feel that it's suitable to attach that as a condition and can be dealt with that way. What was the second part? So what was the?
A lot of the site is grade 2, best versatile farmland. And what mitigations has the planners put into place to, you know, equate to them?
Yeah, sorry. There's a condition attached in terms of soil management, which has been recommended by Natural England, and that requires quite a bit of work actually. If you have a look through the lengthy condition, in terms of setting out the soil quality, managing it, submitting a report to the local authority each year, and making sure that the soil and the land remains the quality that it is now throughout the life of the development.
Is okay, thank you. Members, any other observations, questions? Councillor Cope.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep this brief. I did notice the applicant spokesman mentioned it was low quality agricultural land. As Councillor Kelly said, it was grade 2. It's quite high. But the problem here is Natural England are consultees on any application above 20 hectares. This is 40 odd hectares. I'm not happy that we are surrendering BMV land. However, it's unlikely we can find 40 odd hectares of poorer quality land of that quantity altogether. So reluctantly, we have to approve this, as opposed to the battery sites, there are only 2 hectares. So therefore, poorer quality land can be found. So I am in favour of approving this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Members, any other member wish to make any observations, questions? Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chair. One comment around the size of these farms and probably more future planning applications. I believe that if they're under 50, that they aren't national infrastructure, and therefore, so clearly that number has been picked that way. I do believe there is consultation to change that threshold, so probably likely see larger solar applications coming in anyway, but that's just a comment, not planning. You mentioned that hedgerows, or you spoke to hedgerows. Are we losing any hedgerows in this application, or are all hedgerows being retained? And the reason I say that is, yes, adding additional biodiversity units in to replace hedgerows is good, but what's better is retaining them, and that's because there's far more ecological benefit from having these ancient or old, because they take years and years to establish. So at all costs, we should be avoiding removing them as a first step, in my opinion. So just a question to that.
Thank you, Councillor Hopwood. Tom, are you going to come back on that?
Check the report on that. But there's a significant increase in terms of biodiversity and ecology, and the ecology officer has responded to the application, sort of confirming that. In terms of hedgerows, there are significant amount of hedgerows proposed in the site. As I said in the summary, it kind of reinstates the fields potentially how they used to be, rather than larger fields as they are now. So I don't have the exact figures, but I expect there's significantly more hedgerow proposed than is existing.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Hopwood.
Do we have the numbers for loss? Because I know that is done in the report, or it is taken into account. Sorry to put you on the spot. Appreciate if you need some time to find that figure, but I would, if possible, it would be good to know what that is.
Yeah, just looking at the section of the report, it doesn't have a length of hedgerow, but it does have the percentage increase. So there's a 10.76% net increase in hedgerow units. That's alongside the 224% in habitat units and 46% in watercourse units.
Thank you, Tom. Okay.
Not exactly what I offered. I appreciate that you obviously won't have that to hand today, but just an ask for the future, particularly around this hedgerow issue, if we could make that available within these reports, because I think it's really important. I know it is part of the report because I think I've seen a few reports where that's clearly indicated, and I know that it carries a lot of weight within the report as well. So just for future, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Last point, Chair, thank you. I'll get to 4.31 and page 93 of the report. It does say that footpaths will be lost. The question is County Council have stated in this application that the bridle footpaths and that will be closed up. Is there any mitigations on those points?
Tom.
I'll have to look at that. I'm not aware of any loss of public rights of way. I know that all public rights of way are being retained within the site. Which paragraph of the officer report?
Sorry, yeah, to be clear, if there's rights of way throughout the site, they have to be retained so that you couldn't fence them in because you'd either have to apply for a diversion order or a stopping up order, and that would have to be done simultaneously with the planning application. So any rights of way that are existing would remain open. They'll be impacted obviously because the environment will change around them, but in terms of accessibility, that would not be reduced. So I think the consultation response was just to flag that they are there, but they have been incorporated and mapped onto the plan. So yeah, sorry for any confusion there, but no, there won't be any stop it up. Thank you.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question concerns disturbance from construction phase. Should the application be passed regards to potential dust, noise and disturbance, it says that a condition will be imposed to restrict working and delivery times to reasonable periods. Can you define can an officer define reasonable periods, please? Thank you.
Tom.
Just refer you to the condition number 11 states all construction works, including deliveries, should only take place between the hours of 8 AM and 6 PM Monday to Friday, 8 AM to 2 PM Saturdays, and not on Sundays or bank holidays. So that's our sort of standard condition on construction related activity. So that's what is the standard of what is considered reasonable.
If there is any breach of that, those conditions, then what would happen, please? Thank you.
Yeah, we obviously remind them of the condition, but obviously if they didn't comply with that, then obviously enforcement action be taken.
Councillor Hopwood.
Is the applicant contributing to the parish council with any financial? Because I know that happens with previous applications.
I'm not aware of that on this application, but just to note that it is not a material planning consideration, so it can be done outside of the planning process.
Okay, then just as a comment, it's a shame because most applications we see have that line, it is referenced. I would ask, I guess, the applicant to talk to the parish council as well about potentially offering that, because in our district we do see it. I think the example is 20,000 linked to inflation every year for 20 years. So just a word of advice for them.
Thank you. I thought that was more of an observation than a question. Members, any other questions, observations, any further debate? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can somebody explain how the fire service certificates work, please, and how the applicant is held to those?
We're not aware of what the fire. Yeah, in terms of planning conditions, there's a planning condition to, I'm not sure on this one actually, I'll just check this one.
Okay, is there a question in general about the fire certificates or about this particular application?
I'm just checking because it isn't a battery site, it's just solar panels. We wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't be attached to a solar panel permission. So with it's easy, I get confused to deal with a lot of battery applications as well, and we just spoken about one. But with those applications, we would have a condition for a battery safety management plan, and as you say, the fire service would have to agree that as part of the planning condition, and that I'm not aware of it, but that might involve a certificate between the applicant and the fire service. So that condition would have to be discharged in relation to what would happen in the event of a fire, and how it would be dealt with by the fire service and all the technical details. But that's the battery applications, not the solar farm applications.
Pardip, can you come in?
Yeah, I was actually going to say that some of these questions do actually relate to other areas of legislation. You know, one has to bear in mind that, you know, our focus is the planning legislation, but in a lot of these applications, what you will find, for example, in relation to the rights of way, you've got the Countryside Act, etc., which deals with diversions, and likewise, you know, as far as the applicant is concerned, in relation to health and safety and fire certificates, which will have to be adhered to, but outside the planning regime. So perfectly reasonable questions, but let's not forget that there's a number of other statutory regimes which applicants have to adhere to outside the planning system.
Okay, yeah, thanks for clearing up that part of. Councillor Vanessa, that satisfy your curiosity? Members? Okay, I might need to. Councillor Steele.
Just one quick one, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. As I see it, there's only one material planning consideration that we can really take on board, and that's the loss of the best and most versatile land. On this one, it's 53 out of 58 hectares are best quality, not best quality, but grade 2 and grade 3A. So if we don't feel we can fight this one, I just can't see any possibility in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Any other members? Okay, I might need to move to vote. So, members, if you are to approve the application, please signify. Against the application? Any abstentions? Members, that application has been approved. Thank you very much for the debate. Okay, we move on to the next application, which is number 24/00249/FUL. This is the land at the rear of 38 to 40 High Street, Cheslin, Walsall. Officer, is that you, Helen? Ask Helen to present the application.
Chair. Site compromises a roughly square piece of land situated to the northeastern end of the cul-de-sac of Collier Close. North of the site are the buildings to the front of the High Street, and there's a public right-of-way west of the application between Collier Close and High Street. The site contains dense trees and vegetation cover, and the trees immediately south of the site are subject to a tree preservation order. The site is within a residential and commercial area in the centre of Cheslin Hay village. It is proposed to erect one 4-bed detached dwelling with detached garage to the side. The dwelling would have a new vehicle access off Collier Close with parking to the east and wrap around the garden to the west. The site is within the development boundary where the principle of development is generally considered to be acceptable, and Cheslin Hay is a main service village which is considered suitable for housing growth. The council's arboricultural officer raised concerns with the original scheme. However, the proposal has been amended from 2 dwellings down to 1 single dwelling to reduce any impact on the adjacent trees, and no further objections are raised from the tree officer in terms of protection, subject to conditions. The site is within a high-risk area for coal mining. However, the Coal Authority raised no concerns, subject to a condition to secure a scheme of intrusive investigation and remedial works. The dwelling has been designed to reflect the design and materials of the existing dwellings on Collier Close, and there are no concerns arising in respect of highways, trees, ecology, or residential amenity. The proposal would not impact on the public right-of-way. And on this basis, approval is recommended, subject to conditions and a unilateral undertaking to secure mitigation in relation to the Cannock Chase stack. Just a few photos of the site and the site layout. So this is the application site subject to the new dwelling. As previously outlined, this was 2 and has been reduced down to 1, so there is no impact on the protected trees. So the access vehicle-wise is from Collier Close, and the properties to the north there are fronting the High Street. This is the design of the proposed dwelling in the garage, which is quite simple and uniform and quite reflective of the other properties within the close. As you can see from the photos, the one on the right-hand side is directly aimed at the application site itself, and the one on the left is a view at the end of the cul-de-sac. This is the turning heads currently within the cul-de-sac and looking back down Collier Close. There you go. Recommended for approval, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Heather. Now I've got a speaker listed here speaking against Mr. Danny Spinks, but I don't think Mr. Spinks is here. So I'll go straight to the board member, and that's Councillor Robert Duncan. Councillor Duncan, is there anything any observations you want to make? Thank you. Members, over to you. Any comments, observations, or issues for debate? Members. Councillor Harper-Wallis.
This is the sort of like fill-in land that we wish our whole district was made of, so we could just reach our housing targets through it. But yeah, no, I think we should be approving it. It's perfect for housing development, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other members? Councillor Duncan, I'll come back to you. Want to make a comment?
No, I have no objection to this at all.
Thank you, members. Then we move to the vote. Members, if you are to approve the application, please signify. Thank you, members. Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you, members. That application has been approved. Okay, we now move to the next application. This is application number 24/00486/FUL. This is Orton Meadows, 91 Orton Lane, Wombourne. Helen, is that you to present? I'll ask Helen to present the application.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to 91 Orton Lane in Wombourne. The building was occupied by Age UK between 2015 and 2022 and used as a daycare centre for elderly people. For a short period of time, the first floor was used to provide respite care. In 2023, a planning application was received to turn the property back into residential use, and whilst this was approved, this consent was not implemented. This application proposes to change the use of the building to a care home for adults aged 18 to 65, as well as the single-storey extensions. The building will be used to provide personal care and accommodation to adults aged 18 or above who have the following conditions or combination thereof: caring for adults over 18, learning disabilities, in need of nursing or personal care and accommodation, mental health conditions, physical disabilities, and sensory disabilities. In relation to neighbouring comments that were received, the applicant has confirmed that the accommodation will not be used to provide care for persons with drug dependency, alcohol dependency, persons from a forensic background, or any other purpose within the use class C2A, and the use of a planning condition can restrict the nature of the care. The home will be staffed 24 hours a day, with the staff working on a shift pattern. There will usually be 1 manager and 3 care staff working in daytime and 2 care staff overnight. To accommodate the proposed use, single-storey side and rear extensions are proposed, along with the creation of a new front dormer and 2 additional dormers to the rear of the property. The number of bedrooms would increase from 6 to 8. Whilst it is noted that the site is not sustainably located, there is policy support for a use of this nature and a proven need. The application would contribute positively and providing additional spaces for residential care, particularly for those with learning disabilities, where county council officers have noted that sometimes there is a shortfall for places. The site is also located within the Greenbelt, where policy GB1 of the core strategy and paragraph 154 of the MPPF both apply, both of which seek to restrict inappropriate forms of development within the Greenbelt. Inappropriate development is, by definition, harmful to the Greenbelt and should not be improved except in very special circumstances. Paragraph 144 of the MPPF lists a number of forms of exemptions which aren't considered to be inappropriate, and this does include extensions and alterations to a building, provided it does not result in a disproportionate addition over and above the size of the original dwelling. The building has been significantly extended in the past by around 100%, and any further extensions to the property would require very special circumstances to be demonstrated. The very special circumstances in this case do rest around the proposal's limited harm to the openness of the Greenbelt, given the limited height and the extension's position, and the proposed contribution towards the existing gap in care provision, i.e. providing residential care for adults with learning disabilities as confirmed by County Council commissioning officers. No concerns have been raised by consultees in terms of highway safety or residential amenity. Whilst it is clear from the report that this is a finely balanced recommendation, it is considered that the small harm caused to the openness of the Greenbelt and the modest conflict with the sustainability of the site is outweighed by the proposal contributing to the existing gap in the C2 service provision, as well as job creation, which tips the balance in favour of the development. Approval is therefore recommended, subject to the imposition of suitable conditions, which have been agreed by the applicants. So just a few site plans here for you. So on the left-hand side, that's as the property is currently laid out, and to the right-hand side, this shows the proposed extensions, all single-storey and offsetting about buildings. This shows you the site layout and shows the existing access and the utilisation of the car parking area for the staff. This is a partial front elevation and the access point and entrance. Front elevation of the building as existing. The view down Flash Lane, which is at the side of the application property, and then the entrance to the car park. And finally, views from the rear of the site. Approval is recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many adults would the facility accommodate? Thank you.
Just bear with me. We'll come to that the debate in a second. We have got a speaker. So, members, we have got a speaker. It's would you believe, Mr. Rob Duncan from Duncan Planning, speaking in favour. Mr. Duncan. Mr. Duncan, 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. As far as I'm aware, we're not related. The application before you, as you've heard, is the product of constructive discussions with your officers and has resulted in revisions to the proposal to remove an originally proposed extension at the southwestern end of the building. The application now only proposes the single-storey wraparound extension along with the change of use of the building and some dormer windows. As the committee report confirms, the proposal would only have a small impact on the openness of the Greenbelt, and we submit that there is a very clear and compelling case of very special circumstances to justify approval of this development. Policy H5 of your core strategy specifically supports the provision of specialist housing accommodation to meet existing and future needs. The proposal seeks to remodel the existing care premises to provide spacious corridors and larger bedrooms that you might otherwise find in a normal care home environment, so as to facilitate easy access by wheelchairs. As the committee report acknowledges, there are currently gaps in care home capacity for specialist service provision. Staffordshire County Council has identified a particular demand for the supply of specialist care accommodation for those with physical disabilities, noting that their current supply is unable to meet the demand. The benefits of this proposal in helping to meet that demand, we submit, carry substantial weight in favour of this proposal. I can also confirm, for the avoidance of doubt, as the officers have reported, that this premises will not be used to provide care to persons with drug dependency, alcohol dependency, persons from a forensic background, nor will it be used as a secure care home facility. And condition 4 in the committee report will ensure that remains the case. In addition, this proposal will generate 12 skilled jobs on the site, 9 full-time equivalents, to the benefit of the local economy, and such economic benefits lend further weight in favour of permission being granted, and along with the benefits of meeting the identified need for special care home provision, amounts to very special circumstances to clearly outweigh the limited harm that would arise. A total of 8 bedrooms would be available for patients, and the proposed extension is to be constructed on land that is already occupied by hard-standing and will not have a harmful impact on the character and appearance of the area. There'll be no adverse impacts on neighbouring amenity, and the proposal does not give rise to any highway safety concerns, and there is ample parking on the site. We consequently submit that there's a compelling case of planning permission to be granted, and I would ask that members endorse the recommendation of officers and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Duncan, and thank you for keeping within the time. There's no ward member present, so members, straight to you for any observations, questions. Councillor Barrow.
Thank you, Chair. I know from experience that there is a shortage of this kind of placement, and I think it's nice to hear that it is being considered again. And obviously, the amount of people they have, it's got to be cost effective. So by increasing it but to a small amount, it does make the establishment cost effective for the owners. And I fully support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Barrow. Councillor Burnett.
Shared bedrooms, thank you.
Helen, can we answer that?
Sorry, so an increase of 6 to 8 bedrooms as proposed by the extensions and the alterations. My understanding is they're single occupancy bedrooms. Thank you.
Councillor Burnett. Any other member? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very much aware of the properties only down the road from my patch, and I think everybody that travels towards one would knows it quite well. I think it's actually a very good opportunity for that change of use for something that is needed, and I'm stressing that need as well, as long as has been mentioned by Councillor Mel. I think it's an absolute opportunity not to be missed, and I think the planning report emphasised the need, and I support that 100%.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Members? Councillor Harper-Wallace.
I shared the members' comments around the need. Got a question around employment. In previous schemes, we've used clauses to guarantee interviews for people who meet the minimum requirements of the job spec, as long as they live in the local area. Is that something that we could apply to this?
Helen, can you answer that?
A very good point. However, when we actually impose conditions and when we actually impose Section 106 agreement, and we have in the past, I've done one recently where we have actually indicated that the developer is to actually send details of local opportunities and job specifications to the authority, prior to commencement, etc. However, in dealing with matters like that, we have to adhere to what the policy and the law states. Is it reasonable for a development of this nature, given the size and scale, to impose such a condition or a Section 106 agreement? Is it necessary? So whilst I actually understand the point, I think given the scale of the development, I don't actually think that it would actually meet the tests for a condition or a Section 106 agreement.
So what's the condition that you have in mind?
Well, the conditions that, or the provisions, Chair, through you, that we actually impose is, and it's usually in relation to larger developments, is that our words or covenants along the lines that the developer actually submits a scheme or a specification setting out what steps are to be actually taken to secure local employment and provision, you know, for jobs locally. It's a common covenant that's actually used, but normally in relation to large-scale developments. But as I said, you know, in this particular case, whilst I understand the point, we have a lot of you know, developments of this nature, and you know, in my view, it wouldn't be reasonable to impose a Section 106 agreement or a planning condition, you know, covering the need to secure local jobs for local people for a development of this scale and type.
Councillor Hobart.
So yeah, I think I wasn't thinking of the level of that scheme. No Section 106, no asking the applicant to write like how. It's more of a very minor one-liner that if an applicant in the local area meets the minimum requirement, they're guaranteed an interview. And as simple as that, really, not any sort of commitment to hiring.
Yes. Well, the applicant is here. You know, clearly the applicant has actually, you know, been invited to make representations, and you know, certainly, you know, we can actually formally write to the applicant and make that request, and that certainly wouldn't be unreasonable. But you know, clearly that is a matter entirely for the applicant.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd just like to discuss the fact that I've got concerns about perhaps noise affecting the residents. There's quite a few bar conversion opposite there, and the buildings, original farm buildings changed. It's just a case of, is there a way to make sure that we're satisfied that condition on there to, you know, reduce the level of noise?
Yeah, through you, Chair. It's a difficult one because obviously it's a detached property to start with, so it's not got anything adjoining it. So when you're looking at noise attenuation or protection, you've got to be clear what's the receptor and what's the noise source. So if we were talking about noise insulation, for example, if you were to, I don't know, use some kind of wall noise insulation, I'm not a technical expert, by the way, and then our environmental health team haven't recommended this. You know, if you open a window, you've mitigated, you've undone all of that work. So I think given that it's of a residential scale and that the comings and goings from there will be the same as a larger family home, I don't think it would be reasonable to do that. Also, we've got to be careful not to stray into building regs, because if there is a building regs requirement for any noise attenuation, they would do that. But I think the main factor really is the fact that it's a detached property, and I'm not, there's no clear source and receptor that I think would be warranting any kind of noise protection. I think it's a fair question though, but planning condition terms, I don't think it would meet the tests.
I take up what you said.
Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point, please. I'm glad you got that picture up. So the areas that are coloured out are going to be the extensions. Now, we had an application right opposite this a few months back, and that was in Greenbelt, and we rejected that on your recommendations because Greenbelt and stuff like that. This is Greenbelt, exactly the same. I know we need the care homes and stuff like that, but what are the exceptional circumstances that take it over that threshold?
Helen,
Yeah, through you, Chair. That's what's the finely balanced element of it, and you'll get that from the report. It's clear that it's not appropriate development because the property's already been extended, so therefore it doesn't meet the exception, so it is inappropriate. Therefore, very special circumstances need to be demonstrated. So in this case, the need has been provided to us by County Council from commissioning to say there's often a shortfall, and any resident in need of this kind of care has to be taken quite a considerable distance, often out of the district. So that's weighed in favour. There were more extensions proposed than what you're seeing here, and we've reduced them down to the point where it's now only what is absolutely necessary to make this development acceptable and viable. As Councillor Barrow said, there has to be a balance between the provision of the care and the numbers stacking up, but also the job creation. So yes, it's inappropriate development. Yes, there's harm. The very special circumstances are jobs, need, and it's the fact that it's the minimum that can be required to facilitate the use. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. So what's the, not saying that they might come back 6 months down the line and extend again and extend again?
I mean, that would be a further planning application, wouldn't it? That's something we can't take into account on this application. Councillor Reid.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention that knowing the housing question to so you're 20%. Quite happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for that brief history lesson. Councillors, members, any other observations? Okay, I'm now minded to move to vote and to ask you if you are minded to approve the application, please signify. Against? Abstentions? Thank you, members. That application has been approved.